Hello, and welcome to episode 11 of the Dark Matter Knits podcast. I'm Elizabeth Green Musselman, and the theme for today is Back to Basics. So, if you have joined the podcast recently, let me explain a little bit about my situation here. I'm going to try to record a regular episode today, which I wasn't really planning to do, but, well, I'll explain that in a moment. I am not at home. I am currently on a decadent 5-week trip to France and Italy. We're actually in our last couple of days in France. And we're here because my husband is teaching on a study abroad program. And normally I've been recording, you'll find on YouTube that I've been recording some video postcards that kind of show some of the interesting stuff that we've seen. But today we were supposed to go on a long bike ride, and about 3 minutes into the bike ride, my back tire just blew, and it sounded like I had run over a giant firecracker. It was actually really scary. And I looked at the tire, and the entire thing was threadbare. I think this bike is sort of attached to the apartment, and I think that faculty members have been using it over and over again without maintaining it. Nobody's been maintaining it. So, yeah, the tire just gave up the ghost. So, and then I did something funky to my hip socket as I was getting off the bike. So I was like, you know what? I'm going home. You all go on your bike ride. And I've been sitting here and I thought, you know what? I'll just record a podcast. So, hi. Regular podcast. I am going to show you a couple of video clips at the end of some cool stuff that I saw earlier this week, but I will also do kind of a regular episode today. I'm kind of doing it off the cuff a little bit here because I wasn't really planning to do it, but I figured I might as well try. So, and I won't be doing a technique video, by the way, because I just don't really have the setup for it right now, but I will get back to that as soon as I get back home in mid-July. So we've been having a wonderful time here, and thank you all for those of you who have written in on the Ravelry group, which you will find on Ravelry. We're the Dark Matter Knits fan group. And so thank you all for those of you who have written in to chat about the video postcards and wish me well. It's been nice to get your messages. We've had a wonderful time here. The weather's been beautiful. The town of Angers, which is it's spelled Angers, basically Angers. Angers is beautiful. It's in the Loire Valley. It's probably about 2 hours west of Paris, and it has, I think, about 80,000 people. So it's not very big, and it's not usually super high on people's list of here's where I'm going to go in France if I am going to visit somewhere. But it's a great place to be for a while. I mean, it's a really nice place to live. There's a 14th century chateau right in the middle of town, which you saw in my first video postcard. There's some beautiful cathedrals. This is a very Catholic area. A lot of interesting history in this area. The Loire is it's the capital of Anjou, the region. And you might remember, if you know anything about, for example, Elizabeth I from English history, the Duke of Anjou was one of the people who courted Elizabeth I, if memory serves. I think that's right. This was an area where a lot of the aristocracy liked to live, that weren't seated in Paris. There are a lot of really gorgeous chateaus from the late Middle Ages and early modern period. And this is also the area where Joan of Arc kind of rallied the French Prince Regent into defeating the English and driving them out off of the continent. So yeah, lots of interesting history here, and a lot of Roman history. So we went up to the Normandy beaches one day. So it's been really interesting, and I love good food, so that's been a lot of fun too. I mean, we've mostly been cooking here because we can't afford to eat out for weeks on end, but just the market is amazing. It's actually cheaper to buy fresh produce at the farmer's market than it is to buy it at the grocery store, which is always really interesting. And it's interesting to me too what fruits and vegetables or what things are really inexpensive here as opposed to in Texas where I'm from. So avocados, super cheap in Texas, right? Here, they're a luxury item. So I don't buy avocados here. But things that have been super cheap here, cherries immediately come to mind. I mean, cherries are like $8, $9 a pound where I live, even when they're in season. And here, they're like maybe they're grown here, so they're maybe $3 or $4 a pound. So we've just been gorging ourselves on cherries. Strawberries are very inexpensive here. Potatoes. Uh, Cheese, goat cheese is a specialty of this region. The wine is really cheap because there's a lot of wine growing and making in this area. Meat is very expensive. That was kind of a surprise to me. I mean, I suppose it's because I don't think there's a lot of factory farming of meat in France, so you're probably paying a premium for the smaller farm meat. That would be my guess. So mostly we've been eating, kind of prosciutto style ham or sausages, like very fairly small amounts of meat, if eating it at all. But, once you sort of adjust, once you just, oh, and mushrooms. Mushrooms are a big thing in this area too. So, once you just kind of adjust yourself to the fact that, there are going to be some things here that are easy to get and inexpensive, and they are just as delicious as the things that you're accustomed to cooking with, then, you know, how could you complain? uh, so yeah, the trip's been great. We're as I said, winding up our stay here because the summer program that my husband was teaching on has ended, and most of the students have already left actually. So we're leaving for Paris on Tuesday and flying out of there to go visit my family, who are all in Florence or just outside of Florence in Arezzo. So I will do at least one video postcard from Italy as well. I wanted to do some more kind of knitting content while I was here, like, hopefully meet some knitters or show you some of the yarn shops in the area. But I found that, number one, I'm not really meeting any knitters. I found that there was an English language library in town that has a knitting circle. That's basically, the English language library kind of has all of these events to offer people a way to practice their English, and their knitting circle is one of those events. So I thought, oh, that would be great because my French is not really very good. My husband's is great. Mine's not very good. So that this would be a great way to meet some French knitters and have the kind of general excuse of mostly speaking in English. And, but I haven't been able to make it to any of them. By the time I found out about it, the only one that was left during our time here was at a time when we couldn't go. So it was during one of our field trips. So that was kind of disappointing. And then I went to the two yarn shops in town, and wah wah. They just, I don't know. I think the knitting culture is probably very different here. And I'll only speak for Angers. I have no idea how it is in the rest of France. But I mean, basically, my impression of both shops was that since there isn't, no, that's not quite how I want to put it. It was mostly yarn there was a lot of acrylic yarn, a lot of kind of acrylic blends, and it was very clearly geared toward pretty utilitarian knitting and crochet. Without my even saying anything about my son, my 9-year-old son, went in with me to one of the yarn shops, and we took a look around, and he's like, "Are you going to get anything?" And I said no. And we walked out, and he's like, "That's pretty much I'm going to knit an Afghan for my friend's baby, or maybe a really cheap sweater for my kid store, isn't it?" Yep, that's exactly what it is. I couldn't believe he figured that out. I thought that was so funny. So, Yeah, I haven't bought any yarn since I've been here, but hopeful about Italy. One of you, and I'm sorry, I'm forgetting which person it was, but one of you gave me a great tip about a yarn or a market that's in northern Italy where there's a fairly large yarn stall. So I'm going to see if I can check that out and at least make it to a couple of LYSs while I'm there. Because Italy's a major, as you probably noticed if you've ever looked at some of the labels on the yarn that's sold in the US, even US commercial yarns, a lot of them are manufactured in Italy. So I'm hoping that there will be some interesting stuff there. So in the meantime, what I've been knitting is, and this is kind of why I've called this back to basics, because, I basically, I came over here with my family on a 5-week trip. I didn't really want to pack that much stuff because, I don't know, I just don't like packing that much stuff. It just, even though we were going to be here for a while, I didn't want to bring a whole bunch of things with me. So, I ended up bringing like 4 shirts and 2 pairs of pants and a pretty good amount of yarn, given how little clothing I brought. But still, it's kind of interesting when you're forced to work on certain projects. I've got 5 weeks of being away from my stash, and I've just got to work on what I've got. So that's been fine, actually. Most of what I brought is design stuff that I needed to work on. One thing I can't show you, I finished it. It's an accessory that I'm going to be publishing in a yarn company's booklet later or early next year. So I'm really, really excited about that, but I can't say a word about it. The the other thing that I was working on that I can't really show you anything of is the Arezzo tank that I released through Knitpicks, I guess about a week and a half ago, maybe. I can't show it to you because I sent the sample off to them for photography, and they took some beautiful photographs of it for me, which I was really grateful for, because normally you do your own photographs when you do design for them through their independent design program, but I was really pressed for time right before I came here, so they very kindly photographed the tank top for me, and it's this really pretty new yarn that they just came out with called Lindy Chain, and it's a linen cotton, what do you call it when they chain plied yarn. So it's got a really interesting, the yarn itself has a really interesting construction to it that gives it a lot more bounce. Linen and cotton usually are very, they don't have a lot of memory to them. And this particular chainette construction, that's the word I was looking for, this particular chainette construction allows the yarn to have a little bit more give to it, which means that any garments you make with it won't droop quite so much. It's a lot lighter and airier. And it's not particularly soft when you're knitting with it, but it's not really scratchy either. And like all linen, it softens up as you wash it. So I designed this simple top-down tank with some lace detailing in it. It's actually drop stitch. It's not lace per se, but it has a lace look to it. And the drop stitch pattern kind of starts on the strap and then travels diagonally across the chest and down to the same stitch pattern around the hem. And it's got some shaping to it, so it's very flattering. So I did that, and I had finished the sample before I left, mailed it into Knitpicks, and then I needed to kind of finish up the pattern and get it all released. So I was doing that for the first week or so that I was here. I was trying to do it all by logging into my computer remotely. I think I just didn't set it up right. I tried to do it through, what's the, Google Chrome Remote Desktop. So it's a beta software. It's worth a try, honestly. It's some beta software that Google released called Chrome Remote Desktop. And it's basically free software that allows you to log in. It allows you to log into a computer remotely. So I have my desktop at home. I don't have a laptop. And I was using my husband's PC to log into my Mac desktop at home through this Chrome remote desktop program. It didn't work very well, and I think that was largely my fault. I don't think it's really the software's problem, but if you're the kind of person who has a little bit of difficulty setting up software, I might go with a paid program instead. Sorry, I'm just going to itch my nose for a second off camera because it is driving me crazy. Hang on. You don't need to see this. Just that. Okay, so sorry, I won't be doing a lot of editing on this because I don't have any way to do a lot of editing. So we're just going to have to leave that in. So once I got those two things done, then I got back to working on something that I started a long time ago. So I have a sweater that I published in a British knitting magazine called the Martha Wrap, and when the sweater pattern first came out, the yarn that the magazine had me knit the sweater in was not really my favorite. I actually really liked the yarn. I just didn't like the colors, honestly. The yarn itself was lovely, so I'm just not a big fan of bubblegum pink. I know okay, this is purple. It's about as close as I get to bubblegum pink. Just don't like bubblegum pink. It's one of my least favorite colors. They didn't know that, of course, but that's what they sent me. And then they sent me this rainbow-colored yarn as the accent. And it's not that I'm opposed to rainbow, but I don't know. Somehow the combination was just very, it was very juvenile looking, and I wanted something sophisticated. Anywho, Martha Wrap. It came out in 2011 in this magazine, and I got the rights back to it, and it's just been kind of sitting on the back burner for a while. I wanted to re-knit it now that I had the rights to sell it myself as a pattern, I wanted to re-knit it in colors that I like. So I asked Malabrigo if I could use some of their yarn to re-knit the sample, and they kindly sent me the yarn for that. So I'm going to turn the camera. Oh, no, I'm not, because it's not letting me do this at the moment. So I'll just hold it up here. This is the belt. There's actually a belt that goes with it. It's a cardigan that is V-necked and has a belt that kind of turns into a collar and wraps around the back. It's kind of a cool construction. So this yarn is Malabrigo Rios, which is a kind of between a DK and a worsted. It just depends on, I'm knitting it fairly densely, so it's more at a DK gauge right now. But this is a pretty good representation of, that's a very good representation actually of the color. I just think it's beautiful. I think they must have, it probably started out brighter and they dyed over it with some kind of brown or something. It's really pretty. So that's going to be the belt part. And then I'll show you, this is going to be a little bit difficult to see because I'm trying to do this one-handed, but the body of the sweater is done in a fairly simple lace pattern and has a hem on the bottom. So basically you get, sorry, let's see if I can do this. You're going to have these two together. So I've had the body done for a little while, and I just needed to, I had actually started to do the belt and the collar in a bulky weight yarn that they had sent me, and I just didn't, it was too thick. So I moved down to this worsted weight and like it much better. So I'll show you that when it's all done. So I've been working on that, and sorry, extreme close-up. Like I said, I'm trying to manage multiple, I need 3 hands, I think. So the final thing I've been working on, I've had a lot of knitting time because we've been staying at home sometimes and riding in buses sometimes. And so this is the other thing I've been working on. I think you've seen this before. It's going to be a shrug, and it is knit with Pandia's Jewels, her lace weight, and it's just a beautiful color. Let me see if I can find the tag for you. Ah, yeah, here we go. Oh, and I forgot to mention, sorry, that the Martha wrap, the semi-solid color that I'm doing that in is Malabrigo sock, and it is terracotta? No. Oh, I don't think I have a tag with me. Sorry. The Rios I do, though, and that is... Doing this on the fly here. Sorry, folks. I can feel the tag. It's coming out right now. It's called Piedras. There we go. Bing. So Malabrigos Rios is that's the variegated that I'm doing the belt in. Okay, and this is the yellow lace weight that I'm doing the shrug in Pandia's Jewels Wispy in the Woodland Magic colorway. I love this yarn. It is, it's very crepey, and I'm not entirely sure why it has that feel to it. It's 100% merino, so it's not the content so much, but it just has this. I wonder if I'm going to be able to get this to focus on. Let me see if I hold up my hand here, if I can get it to focus on the yarn. Yeah, a little bit. I don't know, I mean, it's just a basic 2-ply, but somehow it just has this really gorgeous, crepey feel to it that I think is going to block out beautifully. And it's just in a leaf lace yarn, and the pattern is also from this same British Knitting magazine. It's Grace McEwen, The Enchanted Shrug. Very pretty. It's just a simple, basically just a giant scarf, and then you seam up. I'll show you a kind of lame picture of it. You seam up the portion of it that goes over your arms, and then just leave it open in the back to drape across. You don't do any shaping, so the sleeves are very bell-shaped by the time they get down to your wrists. So I've been working on that forever, probably at least a couple of years. It's kind of slow going because it's lace weight, and it's a stitch pattern that you can't memorize, so you have to kind of look at the chart all the time. So I just don't work on it very much. So I thought I would bring it with me since I'm more than halfway through now. So that's what I've been knitting on. Let me think if there's anything else I wanted to tell you about. I think I'll just try to keep this fairly short today. I've already been talking for about a little more than 20 minutes. But let me explain the 2 video clips that I'm going to put on here at the end. The first one is a very short one that is from a sculpture museum here in Angers. The sculptor is named David d'Angers, so it's David of Angers. And he was a sculptor who was born, he was a child during the French Revolution, and I guess, kind of a young man during the Napoleonic era, and lived until the 1850s. So he did most of his work in the early 19th century. And was apparently a very sought-after sculptor to do busts and statues, and did a lot of kind of those memorial statues, and wealthy people hired him to do busts of them. So it's a museum of some of his work, and a lot of it is sort of the early studies that he would do in stone before he would then do them again in metal. And what I really liked about it, and the little clip that I wanted to show you, is that the museum is inside an old church whose roof has completely disappeared. And I forgot to look up before I started. I don't know what happened to the roof. I suspect it was probably bombed during the Second World War. But basically the roof was blown off, and it was rebuilt during the early 20th century, or no, sorry, during the latter half of the 20th century to be this museum. And so they put a glass roof over the top. So it's this really neat, it's a church, a ruin of a church that has had all of these modern elements kind of thoughtfully grafted onto it. So it's just a really beautiful attempt to restore a church without just making it look the same as it did when it was originally built. I really thought it was gorgeous. And all of that natural light, because the roof is now glass, it almost looks like a greenhouse roof. The natural light in there is just stunning. And I don't think the sunlight doesn't do any damage to the sculpture. It's not paintings or tapestry or anything like that. So perfectly appropriate for what's inside. The second clip is a longer, and oh my God, this was amazing. We went to Nantes, which is, if you've heard of this city, it's probably because of the Edict of Nantes, which was signed sometime in the mid 16th century. It was basically an edict from the king saying that Protestants in France had the right to worship. It was later revoked, which is why French Protestants ended up going all over the place. But Nantes is also where Jules Verne grew up. It's on the kind of near the western coast of France, northwestern coast. So it's fairly near here. And what's really cool about Jules Verne having grown up there is that there's a lot of celebration of him as a person and his ideas in the town, including this exhibit, I suppose, it's kind of an exhibit slash workshop called The Island of Machines would be the translation in English. It's the Ile de la Machine. And it's basically this workshop where these engineers are building kind of these steampunky, sort of realistic mechanical animals that do all kinds of cool things. Like they had a giant mechanical heron that would fly across the room with two people sitting in baskets held by its feet. And then the attendants sort of make the head move and the wings flutter. It's so wild. So the video that I want to show you is of their truly grand piece, which is this elephant. And the elephant it's also a mechanical elephant, entirely a machine, that it's probably about 1.5 times the size of a real elephant. It's enormous. It's easily 2 stories tall. It cost 8 million euros to build. It took, what did they say in the video? It took 150 people about 6 months to build this thing. It's constructed out of wood, is the skin of the elephant. 10 cows donated the leather for the ears, and 5 cows for each ear. And then, and it's all mechanical parts on the inside, but fairly simple mechanics. It's, pulleys and gas powered. I mean, it's very steampunky. It's designed on a computer, but the actual workings of it are purely late 19th, early 20th century stuff. So this elephant is something you can ride on, and we didn't get to ride on it because by the time we got there, whatever, we didn't get to ride on it. But I took a video of it walking. And the coolest thing is, I mean, they could have just put it on wheels and had this thing roll through the little parking lot area where they do this ride, and that would have been cool enough. But no, watch its feet. They actually have programmed and constructed its legs so that it actually looks like an elephant walking. It is the coolest flipping thing I have ever seen. Okay, that's an exaggeration, but it is easily on the top 10. And it has a trunk that moves and sprays water, and it bellows. I think I got the bellow on the video. It's so cool. I mean, I wish you could see it in person because the video really only partly does it justice. So, Yeah, the Grand Elephant from the Ile de la Machine in Nantes is the second video. And that's, I think, it for the week. I will, like I say, at least do one more video postcard before I leave, if not another episode. And then I will start recording regular episodes again when I get home to Texas in mid-July. So I hope you all are well, and I will talk to you soon. Bye. Totally forgot to mention where you can find me online. So I'm Elizabeth GM on Ravelry, and you can find more information about the podcast and a lot of the other stuff that I've mentioned at darkmatterknits.com. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, there is a Dark Matter Knits discussion group on Ravelry that you're welcome to join. There is a Dark Matter Knits group on Facebook, and I am Dark Matter Knits on Instagram and Twitter. All right, talk to you soon. Bye. I think this actually counts as steampunk, unlike most things on Etsy.